All right, so get this. Someone wants to do a deep dive into Albert Einstein, and not just the posters and the E equals MC squared guy, but like the whole person.
Yeah, the whole enchilada.
So we've been sent Walter Isaacson's biography,
Oh, yeah.
and let me tell you, this is not light reading.
No, it's a hefty book.
But I get the sense that whoever sent this to us is not afraid of a challenge.
It's not for the faint of heart, but, Isaacson does such a great job of making even the complex physics, feel really accessible.
Right.
So he really does bring Einstein to life. I mean, he showcases the man behind the genius.
I think that's a great way to put it. So that's sort of our mission today, is to kind of peel back the layers and go beyond the sound bites and really try to figure out what made this guy tick.
Yeah, uncover the events that shaped his worldview, the relationships that fueled his passions, and even, some of the surprising things that might change how we see him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, ready for a journey through space and time and some seriously fascinating personal history.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. So Isaacson kicks things off with something pretty unexpected. It turns out Einstein was a late talker.
Yeah, isn't that remarkable? I mean, his parents were actually worried, that there might be some developmental issues.
Right.
Imagine their surprise when, that quiet child grew up to revolutionize physics.
I mean, it just makes you wonder, right? Did that delay somehow contribute to his unique way of thinking?
It's a fascinating question.
Isaacson even suggests that it might have forced him to rely more on visual and spatial reasoning, which could have been a key factor in his later breakthroughs.
That's a really interesting possibility.
And speaking of unexpected traits, Einstein wasn't exactly a model student.
No, he wasn't.
He clashed with authority figures, hated rote learning, and even got expelled from one school.
Yeah, sounds like a classic case of a brilliant mind chafing under, a rigid system. But that rebellious streak, that refusal to just blindly accept dogma that became a defining characteristic of his personality and his approach to science.
Absolutely. And it fueled his skepticism, his willingness to challenge accepted truths, and ultimately his revolutionary discoveries.
For sure.
But, okay, here's where it gets even more interesting. The book mentions this intense period in Einstein's youth when he suddenly becomes deeply religious, even though his family wasn't particularly observant.
Yeah, it seems like he just embraced Judaism with a fervor, following all the rituals and dietary laws. But this phase was short-lived.
Okay.
After reading some popular science books that contradicted his religious beliefs, he abruptly shifted to a more, skeptical, free-thinking perspective.
So from devout to free thinker, all before his teenage years were over, that's quite a transformation.
It was a rapid transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And while he rejected organized religion, he maintained this profound sense of awe for the universe, for what he called the mind of God. It wasn't a traditional deity,
Right.
Or like this deep respect for the harmony and beauty of the natural world.
It seems his scientific pursuits became his new form of spirituality in a way.
Yeah, you could say that.
And speaking of pursuits, the book also shed some light on Einstein's family business. His father and uncle ran an electric company, which for the time was pretty innovative.
Oh, yeah, they were really ahead of the curve with some of their designs. But sadly, it didn't last.
Yeah, sadly, no.
Yeah.
They eventually went bankrupt, which forced the family to relocate to Italy, leaving a young Einstein behind in Munich to finish school.
Oh, that must have been tough.
Yeah, I mean, abandoned by his family, navigating adolescence alone in a foreign city.
Yeah.
It's no wonder he developed such a strong sense of independence.
It definitely shaped him. And amidst all this upheaval, he found solace in his first love, Marie Winteler.
Ah, yes. The book mentions their letters full of intellectual banter and budding romance. They seem to connect on a really deep level.
Yeah, Einstein clearly admired Marie's intellect. She was a fellow student, and their relationship, along with the influence of her father, who was a respected teacher, kind of solidified his anti-nationalist views.
And this actually led him to make a pretty radical decision.
Yeah.
He renounced his German citizenship and became stateless for a time.
Talk about a commitment to ideals.
Right. He was a citizen of the world, rejecting the constraints of nationalism. It's a theme that would echo throughout his life, particularly in his later pacifist activism.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now let's fast forward a bit to his university years. He was passionate about physics, but his time at Zurich Polytechnic wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
He was brilliant, no doubt, but also very headstrong and independent. He clashed with professors, skipped classes he deemed boring, and just focused intensely on the subjects that truly captivated him.
Sounds like a true nonconformist. But that independent streak would become essential to his scientific breakthroughs, wouldn't it?
Totally. It allowed him to think outside the box, to question established theories, and to pursue those unconventional lines of inquiry. It's during this time that he meets Mileva Maric, a fellow physics student who would later become his wife.
Right, and their letters are fascinating. They're not just love letters. They're filled with scientific discussions and debates about physics, this shared passion for understanding the universe.
You can really sense their intellectual connection. It's this meeting of minds that went beyond the typical romance of youth. It's a stark contrast to his later correspondence with Elsa.
Yeah, it's intriguing how his relationships reflect these different facets of his personality.
Definitely.
It seems he sought intellectual stimulation from Mileva and emotional support from Elsa.
Yeah.
But their relationship wasn't without its complications. They had a daughter out of wedlock Liesel whose fate remains a mystery.
Yeah, it's a poignant reminder that even geniuses have personal lives filled with joys and sorrows, secrets and unanswered questions.
And then there's the infamous patent office job. Most people would see that as a detour, a waste of his talents.
Hmm.
But the book makes a pretty compelling argument that it was actually crucial to his scientific development.
It's true. I mean, think about it. He was surrounded by inventions, constantly analyzing how things worked, breaking down complex mechanisms into their fundamental principles. It was a daily exercise in problem-solving and visualization skills that would prove invaluable to his theoretical work.
Yeah, it's almost as if that seemingly mundane job provided the perfect training ground for his extraordinary mind. And then comes 1905, Einstein's miracle year. While still working at the patent office, he publishes not one, not two, but four groundbreaking papers that would revolutionize physics.
It's this incredible burst of intellectual creativity.
Insane.
Brownian motion, the photoelectric effect, special relativity, and the equivalence of mass and energy all in a single year.
I mean, it boggles the mind. And what's even more impressive is that he wasn't just relying on experimental data.
Right.
He was using thought experiments, imagining himself riding alongside a light beam or being in an accelerating elevator to develop these revolutionary insights.
It's a testament to the power of pure thought,
Yeah?
of a mind capable of visualizing and manipulating abstract concepts with this stunning clarity.
One of the most impactful papers from that year is on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, where he introduces the theory of special relativity.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is the elegance and simplicity of his arguments.
Yeah.
He just dispenses with this notion of an ether and demonstrates that the laws of physics are the same for all observers in uniform motion.
So there's no absolute frame of reference, no fixed point in the universe.
Precisely. It's all relative, hence the name special relativity. And this has some pretty mind-boggling consequences, like time dilation,
Right.
where time actually slows down for objects moving at high speeds relative to another observer.
Okay, so time is not a constant. It's relative to the observer's motion. It's like something out of a science fiction novel.
It is. But for Einstein, it was just the beginning. He realized that special relativity, while groundbreaking, was limited. It didn't incorporate gravity.
And that, my friends, is where things get really exciting. The quest for a more general theory, one that could unite gravity with the other forces of nature, would consume him for years to come. But we'll have to save that story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the life and work of Albert Einstein. So last time we left off, he had just, blown the lid off the world of physics with his theory of special relativity.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole time dilation thing. It's just amazing how he could just think his way through these, incredibly complex concepts.
His ability to conduct thought experiments was truly remarkable, and it was precisely this kind of thinking that led him to his next major breakthrough, the development of general relativity.
So this is where that famous happiest thought of his comes in, right? The one he had while working at the patent office.
Exactly. He just, envisioned a person falling freely and realized that they wouldn't feel their own weight. It was this flash of insight that led him to the equivalence principle, the idea that gravity and acceleration are fundamentally the same thing.
Okay, hold on. Help me out here. How can gravity and acceleration be this? I mean, they seem like completely different forces.
Well, imagine you're in a windowless elevator and it's accelerating upwards. You'd feel pressed against the floor, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just like you would if you were standing on Earth experiencing gravity.
Ah, I see. So the feeling of being pulled down by gravity is kind of indistinguishable from the feeling of being pushed up by acceleration.
Precisely. It's all about the observer's frame of reference. And this seemingly simple but incredibly profound insight was the key to unlocking general relativity. It took years of intense effort wrestling with this complex mathematics, but he ultimately prevailed.
But it wasn't just the scientific challenges he was grappling with, right? I mean, his personal life was undergoing some major upheavals at the same time.
That's right. While he's working on general relativity, his marriage to Mileva is falling apart. He's also developing a relationship with his cousin Elsa, and the emotional turmoil of these events, certainly took a toll.
It's interesting how the book reveals these different sides of him through his letters.
Oh, yeah.
Like with Mileva, there's this deep intellectual connection. They're discussing scientific ideas, sharing their passion for physics. But with Elsa, the tone is much more domestic, focused on comfort and affection.
It seems like he sought different things from each relationship. With Mileva, it was this intellectual partnership, this meeting of minds. With Elsa, it was more about emotional support and stability. Maybe he needed both to function at his highest level.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even geniuses have personal lives with all the complexities and contradictions that come with them.
For sure.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of World War I, a conflict that deeply troubled him.
Yeah, his pacifism was deeply rooted in his belief in the interconnectedness of humanity, his rejection of nationalism and blind patriotism. He saw war as this senseless tragedy, a betrayal of reason and human decency.
The book includes this really powerful letter that he wrote to his son, Hans Albert, expressing his hope for a world without war. It's clear he tried to instill those ideals in his children.
He didn't just talk about pacifism, he lived it. He joined anti-war groups. He wrote articles condemning the conflict. He even met with Romain Rolland, the French author who had won the Nobel Prize for Literature for his pacifist stance.
It's remarkable how he managed to maintain this level of activism while simultaneously, pursuing groundbreaking scientific work.
It speaks to his incredible focus and ability to compartmentalize, but it's important to remember that even Einstein didn't work in isolation. The development of general relativity was a collaborative effort.
Right.
He relied heavily on his friend Marcel Grossman, a talented mathematician, to help him with the complex calculations involved.
Oh, right. Grossman, his faithful note-taker from their university days.
Exactly. It's wonderful how their friendship kind of came full circle.
It is. And it shows that even someone as brilliant as Einstein recognized the importance of collaboration, of seeking different perspectives and expertise.
Absolutely. He understood that sometimes even geniuses need a helping hand.
So all that hard work, all those years of struggle and collaboration finally paid off. In 1915, he presents his complete theory of general relativity to the Prussian Academy of Sciences.
It was a triumph of human intellect.
It really was.
General relativity offered this completely new understanding of gravity, not as a force acting at a distance, but as a curvature of space-time caused by mass and energy.
Okay, time for another thought experiment, I think. Help me grasp this whole space-time curvature thing.
Right, so imagine a bowling ball placed on a trampoline. The ball creates a curvature in the trampoline surface, right?
Right, and smaller objects would roll towards the bowling ball because of that curvature.
Exactly. That's an analogy for how gravity works according to general relativity. It's the curvature of space-time that causes objects to attract each other. The more massive an object, the greater the curvature it creates.
So planets orbit the sun, not because of some mysterious force pulling them in, but because the sun's mass warps the fabric of space-time, creating a kind of gravitational well that the planets fall into.
You got it. It's a radical departure from Newtonian physics, a completely different way of understanding gravity.
Wow.
But did the scientific community immediately embrace this revolutionary theory?
I have a feeling it wasn't that simple.
You're right. There was a lot of skepticism initially. I mean, the mathematics was incredibly complex. The concepts were difficult to grasp, and there was a lack of experimental evidence to support the theory.
But that would soon change, wouldn't it? Enter the 1919 solar eclipse.
Ah, yes. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. During that eclipse, astronomers were able to observe the bending of starlight around the sun, just as Einstein's theory predicted.
Wow.
It was a stunning confirmation of his ideas.
So I bet that made headlines around the world.
It did. Almost overnight, Einstein was catapulted to international fame. Newspapers splashed his picture across their front pages. He was hounded by reporters for interviews, and the public was just eager to hear his thoughts on everything from science to politics to philosophy.
It's funny how the confirmation of this, complex scientific theory, something most people couldn't even begin to understand, turned him into a global celebrity.
It was a perfect storm. The world was weary from war, looking for something to celebrate a symbol of human ingenuity. And Einstein, with his disheveled charm, his witty remarks, and his aura of gentle genius, he just fit the bill perfectly.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But I imagine that level of fame wasn't always easy to handle.
Yeah. It certainly had its downsides. He valued his privacy, his time for contemplation and research. The constant scrutiny and demands on his time must have been overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it's the double-edged sort of fame, isn't it?
Yeah.
But despite the challenges, he continued to push the boundaries of science, never losing his passion for knowledge.
His quest for a unified field theory, a theory that could reconcile general relativity with the emerging field of quantum mechanics, became his new obsession.
And that, I believe, is a story for the final part of our deep dive. And we're back for the final part of our Einstein deep dive. Picking up where we left off, we're now stepping into a period where the world of physics is on the verge of another revolution, the quantum revolution.
Yeah, and this is where we see kind of a different side of Einstein. The champion of relativity, the man who redefined gravity, was surprisingly resistant to this new field of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be all over it, right? A new frontier of physics, a chance to push the boundaries even further.
You'd think so, but quantum mechanics, with its inherent uncertainty and probabilistic nature, it just challenged his deeply held belief in a universe governed by elegant deterministic laws. It introduced this level of randomness that he found difficult to accept.
Yeah, I can see how that would clash with his worldview.
Yeah.
I mean, he famously said God does not play dice.
Hmm.
He believed there must be some underlying reality, some hidden variables that would explain the seemingly random behavior of particles at the quantum level.
Right, and his skepticism wasn't just philosophical. He actively challenged quantum mechanics, devising thought experiments to try and expose flaws in the theory. One of the most famous is the EPR paradox, which he developed with Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen.
Okay, remind me, what's the EPR paradox all about?
So it involves two entangled particles separated by a large distance. The paradox argues that quantum mechanics' description of their interconnectedness, where measuring one instantly affects the state of the other, implies a kind of spooky action at a distance that contradicts the principles of relativity.
So he was basically saying that quantum mechanics as it stood was incomplete. There must be more to the story.
Exactly. And these debates, particularly with Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, became legendary. They sparred at conferences and letters, pushing each other to refine their arguments and clarify their positions.
It must have been incredible to witness these intellectual giants, you know, grappling with these profound questions about the nature of reality.
Oh, yeah.
But in the end, quantum mechanics has stood the test of time, becoming a cornerstone of modern physics.
It has. But even though Einstein's objections didn't overturn the theory, they helped to strengthen it, to force its proponents to address its seemingly paradoxical implications. His insistence on finding a deeper explanation, a unified field theory that could reconcile relativity and quantum mechanics, that continues to inspire physicists to this day.
So even in what some might see as his failures, he advanced the field. He forced everyone to think harder, to dig deeper. But let's not forget the other side of Einstein, the one that transcended the world of science and became a global icon. Isaacson dedicates a good portion of the book to, his humanitarian work and political activism.
As the political climate darkened in the 1920s and 30s, with the rise of fascism and the spread of anti-Semitism, Einstein became increasingly outspoken. He spoke out against militarism, advocated for pacifism, and supported Zionist causes.
And his Jewish identity, which had been somewhat in the background in his earlier years, became more prominent as he faced increasing discrimination and persecution.
Absolutely. He became a target of Nazi propaganda, his work was denounced as Jewish physics, and he was forced to flee Germany for his safety in 1933.
The book really captures the mixed emotions of that period. The relief of finding refuge in America, the sadness of leaving his homeland and everything he knew behind. He joins the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, but it must have been a difficult transition.
It was, but he quickly adapted to his new life, becoming a beloved figure in the town, known for his walks, his sailing, and his playful interactions with children. And while he continued his scientific pursuits, his focus shifted more towards social and political issues.
He became a vocal advocate for peace, nuclear disarmament, world government.
Yeah.
He saw the dangers of the nuclear age, and he believed that humanity needed to find a way to transcend nationalism and embrace global cooperation.
His fame gave him this platform to speak to a wide audience, and he used it wisely, urging people to consider the ethical implications of scientific advancements and to work towards a more just and peaceful world.
So from a late-talking child to a revolutionary scientist to a global peace icon, Einstein's life was anything but ordinary.
It really wasn't. Isaacson's biography just masterfully captures the multifaceted nature of this extraordinary man, revealing not only his brilliance, but also his humor, his compassion, his flaws, and his deep humanity. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish reading it.
I think that's a great way to put it. And honestly, we've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to discover. The intricacies of his scientific theories, the evolution of his political and philosophical views, the complexities of his relationships, it's all in there beautifully woven together.
It really is. If you want to understand what made Einstein tick, what drove him to challenge conventional thinking, and to relentlessly pursue knowledge and truth, I highly recommend picking up this book.
And to make it easy for you, we've included an affiliate link in the show notes. Just click on the link and you can have the book delivered right to your doorstep.
So go ahead, dive in, and prepare to be inspired.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.